Hello everyone, I'm Carol Poole. I'm just launching something called Bereavement Befrienders, and this is a poem I've written in response to the passing of the Queen. It's the 15th of September today, and it's getting on for 9 o'clock in the evening, and I've just finished putting it together. If you like it and it resonates with you, please click like and please share. It's called I Mourn. The family of the Queen were blessed indeed to be by her side at her time of need. For to leave this life with loved ones nearby is a right we all would like when we die. So I mourn less for the death of Her Majesty than for those whose deaths were a tragedy. I mourn more for those souls who died in despair, who, unlike the Queen, had no family there. Unlike the Queen of our lovely land, they had no one there to just hold their hand, no one to ensure things were loving and kind, or give gentle support to those left behind. I mourn for the old who died often at night, locked up, alone, hidden from sight, confused and unable to understand why their visitors had all been banned. Feeling unloved, abandoned and weak, longing for someone to come round and speak, longing for loved ones to peep round their door, just as they always did before. Desperate for some loving family hugs, but instead often kept quiet with dubious drugs. Midazolam was used to hasten their ends, but rarely told to family and friends. I mourn less for Queen Elizabeth II and more for those who hoped to be beckoned in time to get to the bed of a loved one before they were pronounced dead. So they could at least bid them farewell and express their thanks for a life lived well. So they could wipe away their tears and, speaking softly, calm their fears. I mourn for those who died in fear, deprived of loved ones being near, dealt with by people wearing masks and hazard suits for daily tasks. Absent smiles, stressed out staff, no longer ready to share a laugh, and nothing they said could be clearly heard, because the masks they wore muffled each word. They looked like aliens from outer space with visors and masks hiding each face. Terrifying visions and nightmare-like dreams must have led many to silent screams. The use of chemicals everywhere and horrid smells pervading the air. Windows closed, doors shut too, like living in a toxic stew. To die in such a heartless way is something we must stop today, for this was a cruelty beyond belief, which caused those loved ones so much grief. I mourn for those who loved their old, but who were called and coldly told that their loved one had met their death, and then in almost the very next breath heard, "Sorry to say your loved one is gone, but life of course just has to go on. So there are things that need attention, and there are some matters we must mention. We've already cleared their things away. We've another old one moving in today. So please come and collect things ASAP. Otherwise, I'm sorry, but there may be a fee." And hardly before they're even dead, the monster rears its ugly head. Officialdom with red tape to spare supports a system that does not care. And of course there's their stuff to sort, plus things like tax and probate court. All this comes when folk are weary, stressed, emotional, and still quite teary. There's arrangements to make and people to tell. There's so much to do and pay for as well. Advisors can tell you what you have to do, but when you call, it's hard to get through. I mourn for those whose lives are in tatters, those who now feel life hardly matters. I mourn for those who gave up hope and used drugs and alcohol to help them cope. But this, of course, made the problems much worse, and many of them ended up in a hearse. I mourn for those who took their lives in despair because the burdens of life were too much to bear. I mourn for those they left behind them, and especially for those who were left to find them. I mourn for those who died lonely and fearful, and for those left behind who are still feeling tearful. So I mourn not for the one who died in resplendence, with family members in loving attendance. I mourn for those who were cruelly denied the right to be there when their loved one died, the right to sit vigil and say their goodbyes as the one they loved finally closed their eyes. I mourn for those who were so cruelly robbed of such precious moments. No wonder they've sobbed. No wonder so many are still traumatized with emotions like grief well hidden inside, and betrayal and guilt and anger and doubt, which one of these days will be sure to come out. Sooner or later, show up they will, and that's when people can really get ill. So if we can help before that time, it's like that one stitch that saves the next 9. I mourn for the casualties of the pandemic and all those affected by the fear epidemic, too scared to step out in case they should die from catching a cold from a close passerby. I mourn for those who can't make ends meet, who can't afford to both eat and heat, who can't afford a roof over their head, and those for whom the pavement's their bed. I mourn for those whose needs are not met, who have no choice but to increase their debts, doing their best just to survive, and wondering how else they might stay alive. I mourn for our elders who worked hard all their lives, just ordinary people, husbands and wives, uncles and cousins and sisters and brothers, grandpas and grandmas, and fathers and mothers. And let's not forget our favourite aunts, and all of them having the same needs and wants. I mourn for babies dead in the womb and heartbroken parents visiting a tomb, parents of children who died in their sleep. It's enough to make all of us weep. And if someone bereaved wants to keep their job, they'll get some days off first so they can quietly sob. But then, of course, it's get back to working, because losing a loved one is no reason for shirking. And if the one who died was the main breadwinner, then somebody else has to find money for dinner. And so the stress of it all can go on until it seems like it will never be gone. But getting with friends who are thoughtful and caring means together we can start giving and sharing. Sometimes it helps to sit down and talk, or maybe just help by taking their dog for a walk. There's a lot of things folk can do to assist them, which are not provided by any state system. Sometimes in our lives we need help from others. Sometimes in our lives we need help from our friends, particularly when life comes to an end. Bereavement Befrienders is about helping each other and doing what's needed to support one another. We all want support that's thoughtful and tender, and that's the intention of Bereavement Befrienders. Grief support groups throughout our British Isles, helping each other and restoring lost smiles. We can't do it alone, so please get in touch, because we need people like you ever so much. We're starting a fundraiser so things can get started. So we're asking all those who are feeling kind-hearted, if there's someone nearby you who's in some distress, can you and your neighbours reduce some of the stress? It is said, united we stand, divided we fall. So we're asking you please to respond to this call. So please share this message and share it around. Let's sprinkle seeds of kindness all over the ground. Let's help them to flourish and grow just like clover. Let's create a carpet of kindness and spread it all over. Thank you for listening. I'm Carol Poole. For Bereavement Befrienders, watch this space. And please share and like and spread this around. Thank you so much for listening.